there is the normal risk of being a carrier.
Of course. You know, I lived this in South Africa with HIV, and that was a bit different because you had to manage sexual interactions,
Yeah.
and that was very private.
Yes.
So there was another aspect to that
Yes.
situation, and a lot of myth created around. So I think
on the other spectrum, there is the normal risk of being a carrier.
Of course. You know, I lived this in South Africa with HIV, and that was a bit different because you had to manage sexual interactions.
Yeah.
And that was... So we're here with Dr. Ambreen Slama Chowdhury, originally from Switzerland with other origins and now living in Egypt. She is a counseling physician, a generalist, a general practitioner, working very specifically to help doctors and patients manage self-care, respect it on a higher level, and begin to practice it both for their own well-being and for those they treat. Today we're going into a very specific discussion about caregiving and the practice of serving your community as a caregiver can be including anyone from a nurse to an anesthesiologist, a medical doctor, a chronic disease specialist, like my guest, Dr. Ambreen Chowdhury. She's also a chronic disease specialist, or anyone who's treating the coronavirus right now, and or any other situation in healthcare where you are asked to show compassion and give care to the people that you're treating. We're discussing this subject today. So if any of you have a special question or an insight that you would like to share with us, you can jump onto the live Zoom and you get the link of the Eventbrite Paradigm Shifters, it's called, because literally this work is about shifting the paradigm, looking at things in a new way. I always say paradigm shifter is someone who solves old problems in a new way. We might not be able to solve all of them, but we're certainly looking at them from a new perspective. Welcome, Dr. Ambreen Chowdhury.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Heleniq, to having me here to discuss this very actual situation and concerns.
Yeah. Well, you heard us talking just before we came live about my experience in South Africa with HIV, and we also began that discussion with another live training masterclass for Paradigm Shifter on the patient education and self-care practices we can all be more focused on at times like the ones people are facing during a pandemic. But really, generally speaking, it's something we all need to focus on. So we began saying, I think it was Dr. Ambreen who started off saying that really it is quite concerning to look around and see that for many people, it hasn't really sunk in. And I think this is true of all situations because we're speaking quite generally today, but also triggered, let's say, by the coronavirus, that it takes some time to move to the first phase of crisis management emotionally, which is shock. A lot of people might be in the shock minutes after they are in the denial, and the denial can take a really long time sometimes, psychologically speaking. So we were saying how many people haven't really realized how infection happens and the severity of it when we are in a time of a pandemic like the one we face now. Infection is really possible for almost anyone, and the risk is increasing as we speak. So we wanted to be very mindful of this as we start our call today. I referred back to HIV, saying there was another situation similar to this where it was perhaps even distinctly different and perhaps more risky because HIV is transmitted sexually through sexual fluids, and of course that's a private part of people's lives, so it wasn't something that you would even know about until you went into an intimate discussion with someone about their sexual activity. Now we're dealing with corona, and we have so many medical professionals out there on the front line. Today's discussion with Dr. Ambreen is really about caregivers and the kind of compassion fatigue that they could be facing. So let's give a quick introduction to you and the work that you do, Dr. Ambreen. Tell us a little bit about your work as a disease specialist, chronic disease specialist.
Yes, I'm I'm originally from Pakistan, but I was raised and I lived all my life in Geneva, Switzerland, where I specialized as a GP. I worked in the primary care department of the Geneva University hospitals. And as a GP, I see that when I care for my patients, I really not the most important of my day cannot be spent on just prescribing medicine for curing diseases. And more, GP practice is made of caring for people living with chronic diseases. And with that, it's a management that is not consultation or disease specific. You cannot tackle everything to cure in 20 minutes time, consultation time. So chronic diseases are very much about chronicity that is repetitive, something that will come and come again, that the patient has to manage himself. And maybe you will see the patient today and then again in 10 days or in a month time or in a 3 months time. If you have to deal with the diabetes, then you have to check the blood sugar, then you have to monitor the level, the blood sugar level over several months. You have to care for any complication and to prevent any further complication to come. So the patient has a large part, a large role to play in that. And that's where I recognize that our traditional way of dealing with patient that is disease specific and teaching or training in silo, learning one disease or one organ after the other was not adapted at all with this chronic disease pandemic that the world is facing. And for that, the, the, the patient is the key person who cares for himself or for living with his chronic illness 24/7. And having an empowered patient, having an empowered patient who can make informed health decision as a partner hand in hand with his care provider was very, very important in my practice. So I decided to attend the Geneva is blessed with a center for chronic disease patient education, and having trained there helped me accompanying more and more people being their own care provider or being the main actor of their care journey. So that's my background. Sorry, I've been a bit long, but that's my foundation that helps me dealing with the corona crisis now. And knowing that to be facing an illness, it's at the end of the day, the person who faces this illness, who care for this illness, who has to deal with it. And we see it more and more with the crisis we're living now, that if a patient will call the healthcare provider or the emergency at the hospital saying, I have a headache, he will be receiving the answer that's, well, good, it's not an emergency, stay home and care for yourself. So how do we respond to that? So that's exactly where there is this shift in paradigm, that we're coming back to patients' important role for his health, patient's role in providing self-care. And if we move on now to the care providers who are living a very intense situation now, they are being heroes, though this word is temporarily suitable for them, but a hero cannot are expected to save the world, but they are care providers, they are human beings, and they are maybe patients too, suffering from any other health condition. So the healthcare system is now very much putting into light these care providers who are working day and night to save lives. And this situation is going to last. So can we be everyday hero on a long time basis over a month of two or two? So how would these today hero be that are very much applauded? I'm glad we're encouraging them, we're supporting them, we're thanking them as a community. Are we going to thank them in 2 months' time? Are we going to have the same enthusiasm to support them in 2 months' time? So yes, this is a legitimate question to ask ourselves. So what about the care of our care providers?
Indeed. And we put that discussion front and center today because we want to respond a little bit to what is already showing up in the Dutch news, in the Netherlands, for example, as a call for psychologists who will then have to be dealing with the aftermath of what care providers are now facing, which is an enormous amount of death that they're witnessing every single day. And there is a call on this particular masterclass for anybody who watches this or anyone who is watching any of our other masterclasses that is a carer or a psychologist or a counselor or a trauma counselor, someone with specific skill to deal with burnout prevention, because really we want to now dive into the real problem of caring for people long term, being a hero on the front line, and Breen, like you say, really out there expected to save lives when in fact, you know, this is a virus no one can control, no one can really stabilize the patient more than what we already know, to the point where they prevent the death or whatever kind of outcome will happen for that patient, depending on their immune system and their health at that time. They can really just help the person feel more comfortable and calm, and maybe they can treat the body to try and help them recover, but it's really up to their own natural organic process. So heroes on the front line, almost like warriors out there in battle, would come home after days and still need recovery and, you know, replenishment. And I'm sure it's a very good example that on the front line in any challenging situation you are forced to see, hear, and experience things that are really troubling to the mind, the heart, and the soul. And right now, there's a calling in the Netherlands for the aftermath management of carers and providers of health and service providers in healthcare. So we have already a very interesting reality for the future. And we're calling out to any of you that would like to form a task force or help and assist with myself and Ambreen. We're going to come up with some interesting way to start addressing these needs, and maybe it will turn into something a bit more global. We're not sure yet, but if you're interested, let us know. But let me just give a quick definition, if I can, Ambreen, on compassion fatigue, and maybe you can jump in with us on that discussion, where we can really consider for the moment that there is many different people in service that can experience this. It's not just for doctors and nurses. Sometimes policemen, sometimes educators or teachers after 15 years can hit a point where they get to what is a potential burnout. We're seeing a lot of burnout in some countries now, even in professional employment in corporates and organizations, mainly because of the high peak performance productivity level that's expected from people when they're paid a salary working in some organizations. So burnout is pretty common. But when it comes in a profession like service provider or healthcare practitioner, it is a certain kind of burnout from the compassionate approach, or having to show empathy, or feeling even the empathy during the profession, becomes a really challenging um, situation, especially when you have to do it ongoing. So it's one thing to be out there in a battle, slaying the enemy or the opposer. It's another thing to be out there fending for lives, saving lives, watching lives pass on, and you're continuously required to provide care and empathy and compassion. So we have this phrase, compassion fatigue, meaning you get to a point where you are really burned out and cannot provide care for others. I myself have been there. I know many who have. It's part of the Women of Truth pledge to support more women to be decision makers and visionary leaders with their expertise and knowledge, so that we can have women that are juicy, out there really helping us work the new paradigm, fit old things that work into it, but also create and invent new ones and work all together, men, women, everyone, to create this, but to do it in a way where we don't get ill and we don't burn out and we don't get deluded and we also don't get dried up, like my friend Viola Edwards says. So, how can we understand compassion fatigue in this pandemic, and what can be done? Let's hear, Ambreen, what is your thoughts, suggestions?
Yes, thank you. I agree completely to all what you said, Heleniq. Here, I think we need our healthcare workforce to last, and we really want them to care for themselves. And I think here the basics of self-care the principles do need to apply to them first thing. I can share a little experience with the audience that might help understand the basic needs concept. I do experience, I do the fasting experience. If I do decide to fast from let's say 6 in the morning to 6 in the evening, so that means I don't eat, I don't drink, I deprive my body from these basic needs till 2, I'm fine, because I haven't eaten, or I don't receive enough fluid. The first thing is not that I will stop working. I will not stop walking or dealing with my daily routine. The first thing that goes is I stop smiling. And I have noticed that that's the first thing that goes. And then you have a bad mood, and then the fatigue comes. So I'm sharing this example to say that the basic needs are absolutely must to have a body, a mind, a person go on. So I would wish, or I would call for every surrounding, every healthcare family supporter. The first thing you could help supporting them is helping them to fulfill their basic needs. Take care they eat properly, and thank you for all the restaurants who are bringing food to the emergency ward or to the hospitals. We see these initiatives in many countries. So help them eat properly, help them hydrate properly, help them keep not forgetting to drink, because drinking is the getting up, going forward energy. Help them, allow them to have a break, to just go to the toilet. I remember during my young years of being intern at the hospital, where you run the whole day, and at 4 o'clock you remember, well, did I go to the bathroom today? So these are things that needs to be fulfilled to be able to continue to go on, and not to get drawn with yourself, with your body. These basic needs fulfilled, there is something very important that that comes equally at the same time as a physical need, is the mind space, or the fact of giving a rest to your brain. Allow the brain to switch off for a moment, not to be thinking about your heavy day. It will allowing to switch off will help regenerating, to be reloading, resetting your brain, your body. Can be through other non-serious comic movie, or playing music, or singing, or meditating, or praying, or whatever, but allowing your brain to reset and to plug off. If I may say on this note, I want to warn my fellows care providers. I want to encourage them not to get drawn by the relaxed time or the switching off time with the social media. So if they are having some rest or break time, try to avoid the screen time, because the screen time will be damaging their eyesight, their focus, their rest time. It's really important that they plug off in the real meaning of the word.
So we can see that it's so important then to actually have a time where you can really separate from the concern, the compassion you're asked to show, the service you're providing to really restore the body. And we know on a biochemical level, and really what you're saying and what we discussed when we talked about patient education, that physiologically our bodies are in a certain kind of adrenaline, right, when we are dealing with stress. So the minute you get a little bit of that time that you just talked about, where you switch off, right, and you really disconnect, I think there are some very interesting neuroscience articles also that talk about brain breaks, really where you separate entirely from something that you've been busy with for long periods of time, and you restore the body way quicker. There's also some really interesting science on this as well, around having the break when you're switching off to do with something nebulous. So social media has become that now, you know, where you're just scrolling and you think you're kind of in a bit of a kind of automatic, relaxed place. But I love what you said about that, because digital social media relaxed time is not the best optimal time for you to be having. Surfing is not that thing that you want to be doing when you switch off and take that break. In fact, you need some time to do that, yes, but because of all the information there, it can be intrusive and disturbing. But one really great thing you can also do is rather take that brain break by speaking to someone that is funny, or getting on a call socially where you can check in with someone that's done something interesting. These have been shown to be social connection moments, positive social connection moments in the brain break time, is the highest impact for your performance when you return back to what you need to be doing. And that time to diffuse is really, really powerful right now. So something else I mentioned was debriefing. Now, I know it must be kind of hard, Ambreen, when you're in this kind of frontline treating chronic illnesses, like you say, to have enough time to debrief. But can we go into that a little bit and see what we can brainstorm together? Because I think if we can talk a bit about it, it might jog people's minds into how they can get a place to do a brain dump. Like I suggested, writing in a journal. Maybe there's not enough time to do that. You're going to tell us because you've been in that situation. And or how can you do a little debriefing? Is it a good thing to do it professionally, and is it encouraged in the profession? Because I know in the future it's going to be necessary for sure for all these people on the front line. But in the process of actually working with clients, is it feasible? Could you go and do like a debrief with your partner, your friend? What do you think?
I think first of all, our care providers, that's a job that they're doing. So they are going to their job and institute.
So there seems to be some lag in the streaming and in the Zoom. Just bear with us. It looks like Zoom is overworked and maybe in compassion fatigue for all these people online. So we're going to
be and should be think about giving or offering. There is usually in Europe or America or capital cities, in university hospitals, the organized service do have a time, a supervision time or a debriefing or a meeting time that can be allocated to that, either as a group, because group debriefing might happen as well if you share your lived experience together. At least you are comforted by the fact that I'm not alone. I'm not the only one living that situation, and I can share or I can relate to my peers. It can be that, or some people, because we're not, we don't have the same abilities or strength or way of coping in front of things. Some departments or some institutions could offer individual debriefing or counseling or help sessions. The family or the usual network has a large role to play,
Right.
as the whole world has changed in his ways. People are confined. People are back to their nuclear structure, where they are in their families, spending more time together because of the confinement. Sometimes generation mixed. So that could be an opportunity to rethink the ties or the discussions we're having with each other. And maybe these care providers can find a support or discover a new support that wouldn't have been needed so far in their own immediate circle. And then, of course, in a way that um, there are other help that could be put in place to give a hand to these people. There are other professionals, psychologists, doctors, supports network who could be developed to be prepared to welcome these tired people. Maybe not now, but maybe in 2 months' time.
Exactly. So we have a call out going out. We are really looking to elevate female leadership in this time. We're calling women to rise to the level of epic female leadership. Everyone is welcome, but Women of Truth specifically looks at female wisdom and women's wisdom, and women who have a desire to be change agents and expertise to do that. So if you are a professional working in the healthcare industry, as a counselor, a trauma counselor, as a burnout expert, and or you know how to work in critical situations, we're putting together a mastermind on this subject to see how we can mobilize something for very specific health related compassion fatigue burnout management for the future. And we are also doing our Women of Truth conference this year, end of November, on the subject of body mind health and how it affects female bodies. So we want to really encourage you to step forward and rise if you know you are feeling this is the time for you to contribute. We are here to help you mobilize and support that initiative. If you know others that are able to help in this way and they are also looking for a way to do this, you can also get them in touch with us, or just make a referral by sending a private message or come onto one of our pages. Women of Truth is the platform. And if you look for it on Facebook, you'll look under the name Yin Alithia, Yinalithea, Yin Alithia, because Yin Alithia was the original birth name for this work, which I developed in Cyprus, called Women Become the Truth. Why? Because I think the compassionate approach right now, nurturing, is such an important part of the feminine quotient. We all have that in us. And coronavirus, it sounds to me like an opportunity. It looks like an opportunity, but what I'm starting to hear in people's conversations is a deeper inquiry and understanding of how we all connect together and how we need to take care of each other at this time. So the whole stay at home idea is a way of staying safe. And that is a type of compassionate care for each other so that we don't infect each other. And we've been saying with Dr. Ambreen through our talks, it's so important right now, Ambreen, for people to be very conscious of how much they can be infecting others when they are outside. And of course, that's why the stay at home idea is in place. But one thing that we are also cultivating here is an opportunity to elevate, grow, expand, enrich our sense of care, concern, and empathy for others. In new and innovative ways, we are connecting through the social distancing.
Yes, back again.
We just crashed. I'm going to
Back
start
again.
on Facebook. Nanette, are you still here?
So I'm still here.
Yay,
Can you hear me? Hello.
where are you from?
I am Dutch,
Wonderful.
but I live in Cairo.
Okay, wonderful. Do you know Anne Breen?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
That's why he invited me to join.
wonderful. You're our only special guest because it's our start, but we're
Oh,
very joyful to have you here.
let me see. Here I am.
Yes, nice to meet you. Are you in?
Yes. Yes, fantastic initiative. I've been following it, listening to it, but I had no idea how many people were online.
Yeah, no, not many on the Zoom because it's our first day, and promotion has happened in a very fast-paced, quick way because we felt we needed to get it out now rather than wait. But we are we're gonna reshare this video, and so we're doing a lot of it for free for this particular subject, and also streaming it. But I think Zoom just crashed, so I'm gonna get it boosted again, and maybe we can go on to Facebook with this one this time, because the previous one was on YouTube.
Heleniq, I wanted to introduce you to Nanette. She's an environment expert.
Oh, fantastic.
And I was, yes. And she has led many initiatives for helping people to work towards sustainability.
That's fantastic, because I'm exactly calling out to God for these people.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you know the story, or shall I tell you quick?
Please tell me quickly.
Yeah,
yes.
So I was invited to a project called Femme Diamonds, and that was my talk in Cairo, which got dropped from the schedule, and now I know why. Because of all this uncertainty, the project suspended. We don't know if it's going to happen. But what it's done for 6 months was put me in the very strong thinking about change leadership and how to support more women to take their expertise and direct it towards one of the SDG goals.
Yes.
And the project that I was invited to curate speakers for and set up a conference in Dubai for with women at the Women's Pavilion was called Femme Diamonds. And it became very concerning, really, because we were building all the momentum to bring master plans to Dubai for the World Trade Expo, and really have what is already existing as a Connected Minds conference there, where there's 1 week every month on a new theme. And we wanted to provide more feminine representation because there just aren't enough women at the World Trade Expo. It was linked to that. So I was putting out a call to sustainability experts, and I was saying, if you know anyone, introduce me, da, da, da. And now I've just decided to build a whole project with Dr. Heidi Badawi. She's also Egyptian, living in Australia, though. She kept coming to all my lives, and I thought, hey, this lady's flying in like a bumblebee here. I've got to find out why she's visiting our flower.
Yes.
Right? So she ended up being connected to another lady I was teaching with, Viola Edwards, a really good friend, or that they'd met. And then I reached out to her, and she's a sustainability expert. And I said, okay, we're going to do a masterclass on the sustainability, since I've been working on it for 6 months with my team here in the Netherlands. And now we're on hold about whether we do it or not.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking how important it is to get one woman from each sustainability goal area and put on a summit. So basically what we're doing now with Dr. Badawi is building a project where we're going to do some research on this, apply for funding, and also build some kind of network or process where we can have very specific female leadership on this subject, and then go into discussions further on about doing the same kind of collaborations with other sustainability experts. I just want
and which SDG do you have in mind?
Well, we need to get representation for all 17.
All 17, okay.
My idea was to have an expert from each one. That's 17 guests.
Yeah.
And we need a selection process, and we need also a kind of educational component, so that maybe we all developing a kind of mandate or a manual on what each of these SDG goals could include how to move, how to brainstorm, taking that further. And there's just so many different ways to move right now, but this seems like an important one. And I really liked her comment because she said a lot of entrepreneurs who are heart-based leaders, you know, the ones that, let's say, are therapists or, you know, whatever sector they've gone into, are sometimes all over the place. And one way to really concentrate the usefulness of everyone's knowledge is to direct it at an SDG goal. And I said, that's exactly what I've been thinking.
Yes.
So we're looking at how can women leaders contribute to that global conversation and take their expertise and knowledge and start brainstorming it into one of the SDG goals. So we're going to have an expert for each one, but then also focus groups on each one of those. And I'm also inviting Monique Custers, who is the mastermind behind really collecting expertise for future proofing, into that session with Dr. Badawi, which is on sustainability and the SDG goals. And that's on the 17th of April now. We're doing a masterclass here on that. And we're calling to experts who want to join us to build that. And here you are. So welcome. Lovely to meet you.
Thank you. That sounds wonderful. Yes. I think it's a fantastic initiative.
What area are you in exactly? What area are you?
I'm an industrial engineer by profession.
Right.
From the Netherlands, and specialized in logistics.
Right.
But then I started working for the United Nations, for the World Food Programme.
Mm-hmm.
So that was logistics for relief aid.
Okay.
And that's where I met my husband. And so this is where I moved around. Even before that, I moved and worked in all different places. I'm now in my 10th country.
Wow.
And I here, because when you move, and my husband has now, since we have children, the main job, and I've been doing consultancy since. And of course, all the time you think we need to work on sustainability. I have done things in waste management, and always kept my eyes and ears open on all the projects, how we can do it cleaner. And here, but the earning money has always been a bit of an issue because of work permits.
Yeah.
And so here, and I started, when I arrived here, a bit less than 3 years ago, I started a group, Zero Waste Club, where we said, we need to help each other to live a more sustainable life. And it's easiest with your neighbors, to give each other tips and join and actually meet physically as well, to encourage each other. And a lot of them have businesses, and so we buy from each other. So it becomes also a friend group, which then it's also, you see that's a group you want to belong to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, and that is, so yes, I'm very mainly focusing on prevention of waste, household waste. But, and I'm going to the Netherlands, going to live there from summer onwards.
Whereabouts?
Amsterdam.
Okay, I'm in Rotterdam.
Yeah, in Rotterdam, yes. Okay.
Stay connected, and please, if you can, join that session, because we have
I will.
Open call now for that, and we're going to get clearer on how we mobilize it. We're going to do one on health and one on sustainability. And I think
it is, for me, it's also for two different things. I've been in the UN system, my husband still is, and following and all the NGOs I worked for. And there's always a disconnect between what they do and the reports they produce and what we are actually, as us, I'm doing the finances, I'm raising the next generation. I have a part to play here, but I'm not really a part of the discussion. And so, yes, I think it is very important to make that bridge and see how we can communicate better.
Yeah, I wish I could formalize it more, I don't like people telling me what to do or people slowing me down. And because of that, I end up doing a lot of these initiatives on my own, a little bit more in the private sector. And I can see that it's not the leverage we always need. But having said that, it would be great if we could make it more formal, more, like pronounced, and have big organizations and sponsors and all that, and really go full out. But I still am not finding that to be the way to go for some reason, and I'm trusting that. So what's happened in the meantime is I'm starting to meet really instrumental women that are pioneering, that are really experienced with what they do, and or they're thinking in an innovative way. And I'm starting to see the momentum is growing on this kind of inner circle type level. So we're not like huge, but where we are, we're harvesting a hive, I call it, like honey's in a hive. And I really believe with the visibility of that, slowly, in that network, we're connecting more and more with other networks, and phenomenal things are happening. There's like a kind of synchronistic meeting and sharing and mirroring each other's brilliance and putting us all out there, where I think at some point there is going to be real opportunities from that. And I think if we are strategic in focus areas right now, we are really needed. So I really am continuing with that. And it would be easier if I had a team helping me. So what I've decided now is to do little focus groups where we all work on something we're really passionate about. And I think this is a very interesting time for us to start to see how important it is, because everybody's been giving so much great support for what's happening, and it's developing a life and a momentum on its own. So yeah, I've got a network. I'm using it for good and really working on how to monetize aspects of it, because I want to keep it going. And at the same time, I'm training women to step up, really, like in an inner circle. I have a project where I'm training them how to build their visibility for the change work that's needed. And in that group, they are always amazed when they have contact with these other women. And they see that we all, I think, need to know that, it's not that easy to be considered and to have the decisions made by equal representation. It's a long process to get there. The SDG goal number 5, we're still stuck on that. And I'm really sick of it. So I really want us to start looking at the rest of them, because I think if we do mobilize the rest of them, we're going to manage number 5 as well. So it's an interesting time. So we just stay close and stay connected, and maybe we can get
and
you.
I think for me, the value of a network is, yes, to have some role models. As you mentioned, that you look at others inspiring people. And I also really like it to feel a bit of pressure, the peer pressure. Somebody asks you, what are you going to do? Can you deliver it next week? Because as we all know, we have dozens of roles. And if it is not committed, I have a lot of plans. If there's no commitment to it, I'll say tomorrow, and it's not happening. So when there is people I like, who I trust that they will work as hard as I do and they will deliver, then I really like it to have a bit of homework. And they ask me, please write it down. And so, yes. Can you still hear me, Ambreen?
I can. I think you're talking to me, right?
Oh, you're talking to you. Heleniq has left.
So before we do this, how do you feel about being live on YouTube? Because all that conversation we had went live, and I have to turn it off. So let me